I'm pretty sure I've talked about this briefly in other monologues that I've done. I've been thinking about how a lot of opposite emotions, or just anything that seems like it's the opposite of something else, is the exact same thing, just on different sides of the same spectrum. And I've been thinking about pride and how we seem to glorify pride as like something we need to strive for. But pride is the opposite of shame. And they're both the same. They're the same energy, but they're just mutated versions of each other. They're both extreme versions of the same energy. So they're on a polarity. Pride being one end of the spectrum, shame being another. But it's literally, they're just polarized versions of the same energy. And I feel like if you can be proud of yourself for doing something, you are now trapped having to continuously uphold that, or else involuntarily you're going to sink into shame. And there's some scale out there, some psychology scale out there that like ranks the vibrations of certain emotions that you can feel. Like there's certain wavelengths you can be on, and they range from very high wavelengths or like high vibrations. Like I think the highest vibration is authenticity, and then love, and then acceptance, or something like that. And then at the bottom of the list is death, which is the lowest frequency you can be on. And right above that, like 20 points above that, is shame. Pride is somewhere in the middle, I think. It's above desire, but it's like a middle tier wavelength you can be on. Oh fuck, I accidentally got off at the exit and I was supposed to switch lanes. Okay, anyway, but pride and shame are literally the same thing. So if you can be proud of something, you can also just as easily swing to the opposite and become ashamed of it. And shame is so close to the vibration of death. You can go from being proud to, oh no, suddenly something changes, and now the same thing that you were once so proud of and placed all your life on and placed your entire identity on, you're now ashamed of it, and now you're literally just like 20 points away from death. I feel like this is why I wrote an entire essay about something similar to this when I was in college, but I deleted it. I just wanted to disappear one day, and I just deleted all my essays that I ever posted for other people to read on the internet, so I lost that essay. But I was talking about how in the modern world, where everything is about capitalism and your career and all kinds of stuff, there's an epidemic, especially in Western cultures, of men being demoted from their high-paying job, which they placed their entire life on, and they were so proud of themselves and they thought it was everything, their whole identity depended on it, and then they lost that job, and they reached an ultimatum within themselves of either they're going to accept a lower paying job and have to sell their house and their expensive car and have to settle for something more mediocre, or they would kill themselves. And a lot of men chose to kill themselves. So I feel like that it all ties in with this new information that I'm getting years later after I wrote this essay about how pride, the exact same thing that you are proud of, can ultimately lead to your death, just because of how close to death the energy frequency of shame is. And like, everyone has felt shame for something before. It feels heavy. It's humiliating. It's like you want to literally physically hang your head. Like you don't want to be seen. You don't want to exist. And I've been thinking about this a lot. I first came across this scale like last November when I was in a really dark place. I was very exposed to energy. I wasn't keeping up with like energy hygiene. I'm a psychic. I'm extremely sensitive to energy. I do a lot of energy work. It's just something I have to do because I don't know if everyone is like this. I don't think everyone is, because I had a psychic awakening in the shower when I was 21 years old. And one day it just like all this stuff just opened up for me, and it's just like it's constant work to navigate it. Not everyone's into spirituality. A lot of people like to say I'm schizophrenic because they want to think I'm crazy, because they want to feel like they have one up on me. But I know what I experience, so I don't give a fuck how it sounds to other people who are ignorant. What was I saying? Oh yeah, I came across that scale in November. I was in a very permeable place, like energetically. I was picking up on all kinds of people's emotions. I was picking up on somebody, I don't know exactly who it was, but I was picking up on someone who lives in a state of shame very often, to the point where their entire ego is distorted. And their entire life relies on competing with other people and trying to feel proud of themselves compared to other people, because internally they feel ashamed. So they're constantly oscillating back and forth between pride and shame very heavily. And it's some nights I feel like I was so tapped into their energy. Some nights I would just start twitching, like I wanted to, like my body was trying to like die, like I didn't want to be here anymore. And I know that was not my energy. Like I can merge energy with people if I'm not paying attention. It might have been my uncle, because he moved in. He's been a massive pain in the ass ever since he moved in. He's ashamed of himself because he abandoned his family and his first wife, and he abandoned his children, was a deadbeat father and can't hold a job, and he has extreme OCD, and he's living in denial about his life, and he's a burden to us, and he's a fucking pain in the ass. But that's another story. Anyway, it might have been him, but I was talking to some people online. I don't know. I just pick up on energy, long story short. But yeah, I came across that scale in November because I feel like that's when I really needed to see it. And I wanted to talk about neutrality, how neutrality was higher up on the scale. The video itself, if you go on my, I think it's under my energy healing list. It's from Queen Herbie. It's like, I don't know what the video is called. It's called like The Path to Courage or something, but I only have one Queen Herbie podcast in my energy healing playlist section. That's the one I was talking about, so you can watch it if you want, so you actually can see the diagram, know what I'm saying. But I'm talking about how, like, let's take love and hate. They seem like they're opposites, but they're the exact same thing. They're just on different polarities. And if you think about the word polarity in itself, it's to be polarized. Literally, whenever you have a polarized view of something, you have a distorted view of it. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing things subjectively and in an extreme, like totally dramatized way. I think about how when we are looking at something or we're feeling an emotion that is polarized, we have like tunnel vision. The more polarized you are in a certain emotion or a certain state of being, the more tunnel vision you have, the more you are by default living in denial, because in order to be hyper focused or hyper experience one emotion, you have to have like subjective, what's the word? Bitch. Yeah, pull out in front of me. What is it? Selective attention. So you have to, by default, in order to focus, or in the case of an emotion, really immerse yourself into that emotion, you have to deny and blur out and just go numb to everything else. So I feel like when we get too stuck and too polarized in pride or shame, the more you are in those emotions, the easier it's going to be one day for you to break, and then for you to swing right to the opposite of it. So I feel like this is why, like, even when we're infatuated with people, we think, oh my God, I'm so in love with them, like they're the one. And then you're obviously in la la land. I feel like that's what infatuation is. We're obviously being delusional. We're not seeing them as a person. So when that infatuation phase, the more you were in love with them, the more you're going to swing to hatred. The more you're going to fucking hate them. The more they're just going to, everything they do is going to annoy the fuck out of you. They're going to be a fucking demon. And suddenly they're like this gift from, at first they were like this gift from God who, like, they're the one. And then you just fucking hate them. Because you were so, it's like the more extreme you were in one side of your emotional experience, it's like in order to balance itself out, you have to swing to the very opposite of it. And I feel like when we don't navigate these kinds of highs and lows we experience when we're operating on polarized emotions, we can easily swing right into fucking disaster. Like, I feel like there's ways to skillfully go from feeling like pride or shame and kind of like blunt the harshness of it, or like make it the swing into it less dramatic. Like, I feel like in the universe, everything is seeking balance. So there's always going to be a way where balance manifests itself. And I feel like if we can take more of a neutral stance on things, then not only do we like spare ourselves from that violent swing from one polarized version of the same thing to the other end of it, but we also expand our perspective a lot. Because, like, when we're operating in a polarized view of anything, or we're feeling a polarized emotion, we lose sight. We lose intuition. We lose clarity. We lose the big picture. So I feel like reminding ourselves, and a lot of this has to do with, like, I don't know what the word is, detaching, but like taking things less personally. Or like, if you have a skill that you're really proud of, this is like an example of what I mean. If you have a skill that you're really proud of, like you draw, say you're like a really good drawer, and instead of having a really neutral perspective about it, like, oh, I'm really good at drawing because I spend so much time doing it, because I was always encouraged to do it, so it's only natural that I would end up being really good at it. Let's say instead you have a very prideful perspective on it, and you're like, I'm such an amazing drawer. Like, this is who I am. I'm so good at drawing. No one can touch me because I'm an amazing drawer. I'm better than you at drawing. I'm the shit. I'm awesome. Whatever. I place my entire identity on drawing. Then let's say one day you break your hand and you can't draw. Then you're going to feel ashamed. You're going to feel ashamed of yourself. And instead of that situation being like, oh, I broke my hand because I tripped and it was an innocent mistake, it's neutral. It's like, it could happen to anyone. You have a very personalized, narrow, overly dramatic and delusional perspective now, and a very shameful perspective because you feel like you just lost your entire identity because you broke your hand and you can't draw anymore. And so then you're emotional, you feel ashamed, and then you might, since you're on such a low vibration, instead of having like a neutral perspective of it, which is higher, which is even above pride, it's like you may even then descend even further into self-destructive behaviors, violent outbursts, being really irritable, feeling really down on yourself. Your self-esteem is shot now. That's just an example. Like say you play sports. I've seen a lot of boys go through this, especially when I was younger. Let's say you place your entire identity on playing a sport, and then you get an injury and you can never play that sport again. Now you think you ain't shit, and you want to go to a bar and drink yourself to death every day, and you have an identity crisis, and you feel like a loser now, and you spiral into a depression, and then you fall off the edge of a building because you're so fucking ashamed of yourself. Like, that's just an example of how I'm talking about how these things can like swing so quickly and so violently from one version of themselves to another. But also I feel like when we take a neutral stance on things and we free ourselves from pride and shame, and we like, it expands our view again, it expands our emotional capacity again. It feels like a sigh of relief, honestly. Also, I want to talk about something I realized that kind of ties into this. Like, if you feel proud of yourself for overcoming hardship through sheer grit or sheer hard work, just any hardship that could be in your life, there's going to come a time where you can't do it anymore. You can't fight back anymore. You can't win. You can't defeat it. Like, I feel like this is why sometimes it's just best to accept defeat and just outweight things and take losses, because it's training you to, when the day comes where you ultimately are unable to beat whatever you're going through. Like, say you had cancer and it keeps coming back. The first few times you beat it, you're going to think you can beat it every time. And then you have like this standard to uphold, and you're proud of yourself for defeating it. And then I feel like a lot of people who die of cancer end up dying in a state of shame, especially if they were able to defeat it before and they felt proud of themselves. I can't give away a lot of information about the work that I do because of HIPAA, but I've already said too much. But I'm just giving examples on this stuff that I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about all this stuff for years. I do a lot of writing on my YouTube page. I've written about all this stuff, but it really all ties in together. And I've been doing more monologues on my YouTube because I have a long drive home and because I'm taking a break from music. Yeah.